It's the 3rd of January 2020, and in case you've been living under a rock and haven't heard, Australia is literally on fire. Over the past few weeks, a large portion of the forested east coast has been ablaze with the most fierce and devastating bushfires on record. Many lives have been lost, hundreds, possibly into the thousands of homes have been destroyed. Natural bushland and wildlife have been completely wiped out. It's a very sad and dark time for Australian historical records to remember upon. But the biggest mystery surrounding these devastating fires is, where is God? You know, the all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing, all-wise deity who created the earth and everything in it. He apparently controls natural events which can cause earthquakes, floods and tornadoes, which coincidentally also kill people. But don't worry, he loves you. So where is he right now while this country burns? How is it that a God always seems to get a leave pass from scrutiny when drastic action is required to save people's lives, their homes and native flora and fauna? Why is it the Christian apologists will always come out in defense of their truant God, and they provide excuses like God works in mysterious ways? But if a cat is rescued from a tree by an emergency service worker, then of course it's labelled as a miracle, with all thanks and appreciation going to a God because the cat was saved. What part of Christian apologetic mental illness is not understood here? Christians, let me tell you why your God has failed to show up, and why he's done nothing to help those very people who've lost their lives and their homes, even after a lifetime of faith in something that can't be proven by physical, real-world facts or data. It's all about the faith, right? And I'd bet my house that some Christians awaiting certain death in their homes were on their knees praying profusely for divine intervention and safety, and instead they got the opposite. The reason your God was and still is absent, and people's prayers were not answered, is because there is no God. You are wishing upon a falling star when you cast your prayer into the abyss. If there was an almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing and all-seeing God, then he would be the true saviour of humanity, like a book says he is. He would have already sent over storm clouds, which he allegedly creates, and those storm clouds would have dumped a month's worth of rain in 24 hours, and those fires would have been extinguished weeks ago before the first house was burnt to the ground. But nope. What do we get instead? Fire, and lots of it. And an ironic and laughable part of this story is how the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, who is a devout, radical, extremist Christian from the Hillsong cult, decided to take a planned holiday to Hawaii a couple of weeks ago, as the fires were intensifying. He was ridiculed and abused in the media for not being in Australia while the country was burning. But the Australian Christians who were beating up one of their own creed, they seemed to ignore the even bigger fact that although their Prime Minister wasn't in the country, either was their God. But you can't blame your God for anything bad, right? Because apparently he only does good things, except saving lives and property. But a radical extremist Christian Prime Minister can do bad things, and they will damn well let him know about it, and they'll want to crucify him for his absence. Meanwhile, their God gets a leave pass for his absence. How convenient is that? Australian government census data shows that Christianity is on the decline in Australia, whilst non-believers are increasing in numbers, and this is because people are learning to escape the indoctrination cult known as religion, and they are thinking with their own minds and are able to see the sheer absurdity and hypocrisy when it comes to disastrous events like the bushfires we are having right now. Hopefully the one good thing to come out of these fires will be a much larger atheist population when real people in the real world discover their God failed them miserably. And once they look at the real facts and evidence, the conclusion will be reached: there is no God to be seen or heard of anywhere. Otherwise, he would have shown his magic, like he did those thousands of years ago when historians and record-keeping technology wasn't that believable or credible. Unlike the Egyptians who kept their records chiseled into stone, and the best we get out of Christians is a book that apparently was first written in Hebrew by a group of unknown authors and then converted to English, and rewritten, and rewritten, and rewritten. You get the idea. My heart goes out to the victims of this natural disaster that was also made worse by the Australian politicians who've made it illegal for a private landowner to chop down a tree which may be hazardous in a high fire risk situation. You can be fined or even go to prison if you are caught felling natural trees. This is the sort of madness that comes about when ordinary people are sucked into Christianity and then lured into the false idea of the church and state being joined at the hip. And just remember, guys, Christianity is the biggest mind scam in the history of the world. It's never too late to break the indoctrination.